Hello, today I would like to speak to you about the beautiful virtue of prudence. As you know, prudence is one of the four cardinal virtues. And in fact, it is sometimes called the queen of the virtues because it guides and directs the other virtues to their ends. And without it, they could not be considered truly virtuous. For example, fortitude is a noble virtue, but if not guided by prudent choice, it would become no more than foolhardy bravado. It takes fortitude, for example, for the paratrooper to jump from a plane into a battlefield, but if he chose to jump without a parachute, that would not be fortitude, but simply stupidity. Yes, well, clear enough. But as we know, all choices are not so obvious. Perhaps I have a friend living a sinful life, and I want to help him, but what is the best time and place to do so? What is the best manner of correcting him? What are the best words to choose that would be firm but not harsh, that would be considerate but not weak? So, bottom line, how do I exercise charity while not sacrificing justice or God's glory? Well, to sift through all these possible pitfalls in the application of our virtue, that is the work of prudence. So St. Augustine says that prudence is the knowledge of what to seek and what to avoid. And clearly, since we ultimately seek God, this knowledge of what to seek and what to avoid is relative to how well it will lead us to God. And so that actually constitutes the first question, if you like, that St. Thomas asks when he treats of this subject of prudence. So he asks, what power of the soul does the virtue of prudence perfect? And he will determine that it is the practical intellect, this part of the intellect which deals with the concrete choice, the concrete discernment of what is to be done in particular cases, as opposed, for example, to the speculative intellect, which simply ponders the truth for its own sake. So the practical intellect deals with particular truths, particular applications of the judgment, and it is that which prudence perfects. And in treating of that, then, 3 points seem to come to the fore for our consideration. Taking for the first point St. Isidore's definition or explanation, a prudent man is one who sees as it were from afar, for his sight is keen, and he foresees the event of uncertainties. And so this first beauty of prudence is that it gives to the soul a certain knowledge of the future, a knowledge of the future obtained from knowledge of the present or the past. Because in comparing the present and the past to what is likely to happen because of the situation, because of circumstances, we can say that the prudent soul has really a certain knowledge of the future after a fashion. The second point to consider is that because prudence does choose between those things that help and those that hinder, it is chiefly the taking of counsel. Prudence considers how things stand in relation to our end, and in that consideration, weighing those things and how they relate to our end, well, that is the taking of counsel. And so counsel is really the proper function of prudence. And that takes us to our third point, that is important as this taking of counsel is. St. Thomas says in one of the answers to the objections in his article, the worth of prudence consists not in thought merely, but in its application to action. And this act of applying a truth to the particular case is the whole purpose of the practical reason. So not simply the speculative side, but the practical side. For example, knowing the rules for driving does not necessarily make one a good driver. One must know how and when to apply those rules appropriately. And since the end or purpose for which we do something is the most important element in that act, for that reason, prudence is such a precious virtue, because it doesn't consider the goal simply in the abstract, but points out the concrete means to reach it. And so, on a practical side, when one asks, as they do with many virtues, how do I acquire that virtue? How do I acquire prudence? Well, the usual and certainly true advice is, well, seek counsel, take time to reflect, consider the consequences, and things of this nature. But we might add to that, as we've seen, that it is this the practical intellect deals with practical choices, and this is what prudence perfects. That, for example, parents might encourage their children to make decisions within a proportionate amount of time. We have often heard cases of children taking an interminable amount of time to decide on very simple things. They want an ice cream cone but can't decide between strawberry and chocolate, and it takes them 10-15 minutes. So a good counsel would be for parents to say, well, you've got a minute to decide, otherwise you get vanilla. And the lesson here is not, I'm in a hurry and I refuse to wait for you any longer, but to teach children, or perhaps ourselves, if we are the ones that are weak in that regard, that there is a proportionate amount of time for everything. And the virtue of prudence is not only in taking counsel to determine what the best choice is, but then to make that best choice in the fitting time, at the appropriate time. So thank you for listening in today. I hope you have found some food for thought in today's reflections. So if you have, please say an Ave for me. God bless you.